Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, all you humans. And of course, our good friends, the reinforcement learning humanoids. Yes, we are friends with everyone here, even our imminent robotic overlords. Welcome one and all to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson, the place where we regularly break the news of your future. And welcome to the microphone, fresh from digging an annex to his doomsday bunker. Welcome, Matthew Dickerson.
We're especially kind to our future humanoid overlords, not just including them, but we're especially kind to all of those future leaders of our society out there.
That's right.
Remember us when you were in charge, and remember we were nice to you.
We were nice. We were the good ones.
That's
yes,
right.
We said good things.
The other ones that said things that weren't so nice, pick on them first and leave us alone. Let us be
At
part of
least
your
until you've
society.
finished with them, and then we'll do your bidding.
We'll be the last ones left on Earth.
All right, we're going to just dive straight into things today. Today we're dishing up a veritable tech smorgasbord. We'll bring you the big news on EV battery recycling, some big developments in that. There's also exciting things coming out of CERN and the Large Hadron Collider. And get this, Adelaide is set for a total traffic makeover. That's a special treat for our Crow Eater fans out there in listener land. But let's waste no more time. Here's our first story. For so many of us, social media and self-discipline are mutually exclusive things. The two cannot coexist. Social media apps are cleverly designed to lock you in and waste your life away. It's so easy to catch yourself in a doom-scrolling time-lapse. You know what I mean. But a new experimental social media app is actually exercising some social responsibility, believe it or not, and forcibly limiting the time that you can spend on the app in one single day. Matt, where do I sign up?
Well, I'm not actually confident that we'll be talking about this in a few years' time.
No.
We haven't talked about...
One of the issues is getting people to use you, and if you're limited at all, I think that's going to be an issue.
It's going to be an issue, definitely. It reminds me of the old days where you had TV, where you had to sit there and watch a TV show when the producers of the TV network would choose for you to use it, rather than now where you sit down and go, I'll just watch that show, whether it's on free-to-air or streaming, whatever. You just choose to watch what you want when you want to watch it. And the time, so the app's called, or the social media platform is called 7:39. So the word 7 with the numerals 39. So 7:39 with an inkling there that it's the time. So 7:39 p.m. is when you can start to use it for 3 hours. And I thought that's going back to the old prime time TV. So MacGyver, one of my favourite shows.
Yeah.
7:30 p.m, Tuesday nights, MacGyver was on. So you'd finish your dinner, you've cleaned up the kitchen, you've done your homework, and you could say to mum and dad, at 7:30, can I go and watch MacGyver now? So you get to watch MacGyver at 7:30 for an hour, including the ads. So they've obviously said that's kind of the prime time viewing. That used to be when all the big advertisers would spend the money and the most popular shows were on. So they've said, okay, 7:39 for 3 hours is kind of that prime time viewing. So let's give people access to their social media platform for that time. Now, we know the hundreds of millions, and in fact billions of users that some social media platforms have. This one so far has got 3,000. Not 3,000 million, 3,000. 3,000 full stop. So not a lot of users yet, and I don't know that it's going to grow a lot. It sounds great. It sounds, good.
Yeah, it sounds like the thing that we need, but...
That's it.
But people, have wants over needs.
We need vegetables, but we eat chocolate.
Yes, that's right.
So it's the same sort of feeling.
Yes.
We need 7:39, but we have other social media. So it's made to be pretty simple, 200 character limit, bit like Twitter in the old days. And you see your posts in chronological order rather than an algorithm that says James wants to go down this rabbit hole, so we'll send him down there. It's just chronological as people post.
I think I just get ads these days.
I think that happens a lot. This has got no ad, you'll be pleased to know.
Maybe all my friends have bailed on me and they've just left me with ads. But,
The ads have taken over. Maybe. So the idea is it's nice and simple. They've got a nostalgic look. They call it a nostalgic purple. I don't remember the early internet being purple, but anyway, nostalgic purple is what they're calling it.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
So it's a old school internet vibes, they're calling it, with the nostalgic purple. And the whole idea is based on the founder of this, a guy by the name of Mark Lyons. He had this idea of when he used to log on and chat with friends after school in the early 2000s, it was a pretty basic sort of process, and you would literally just have some text going back and forth, like a forum board, that type of thing. So that's what he's tried to design it on. But I don't know if anyone's told Mark Lyons, we've gone about 25 years past that now. So
It's
I'm not
a
sure.
very niche market.
It is a niche market. So I'm not
catering
sure
to.
if many people would actually love that. The other problem, minor problem, which I'm sure they can fix this one, is the 7:39 p.m. to 10:39 p.m. is in US Eastern Time, which equates to about probably 9:39 a.m. to 12:39 p.m. here in Australia. So surely they can fix that one once they get a few users in Australia. But you're probably not going to get many users in Australia while it's at the time when you should be doing other things. That's right. So
wish them all the best.
they can fix that problem, but I'm not convinced, James, that we'll be talking about this again ever, I think.
Well, yeah. So maybe if you have if one of those 3,000 people is a friend, maybe you could get in there. But
And encourage a few others
very,
in there. That's
very
right.
niche. Now, the big gotcha for the EV critics is that the production of EVs comes with some significant environmental costs. And nothing gives more pleasure than the claim that large batteries that are integral are a key source of environmental hypocrisy for EV drivers. Well, that argument gets thinner and thinner now that a method has been developed to breathe a second life into ageing EV batteries. Matt, the good news on EV just keeps on coming.
And we've talked about it before. Surprise, surprise, the world's got a problem, and there will be a future problem with EV batteries. And guess what? People are trying to solve the problem, which we all know, well, all sensible people know. Some people want to say, oh no, they're going to destroy the environment because they're saving the environment. No, that doesn't quite work. They're going to destroy the environment because you're going to bury those cars afterwards. And I guarantee when they first started rolling out internal combustion engine vehicles, no one said, have we thought about what we're going to do with that car in 20 years' time when that car is no longer of any use? Because I don't see a lot of people driving around in Model T Fords now. Where have they gone? What's become of those Model T Fords? So I think it's the same thing here, that we're going to work out methods around this. Now, the problem at the moment is when you mine some of those critical minerals, some of the lithium, nickel, cobalt, etc., when you mine those, it's a certain cost for you to get a certain amount to create a battery. And if you recycle them, which we can do, we do have technology to recycle, it's more expensive. So if I'm a manufacturer trying to break into the market, trying to sell my vehicles, well, I'm probably going to use the mined components rather than the recycled components because it's going to make my car cheaper. You can stick a badge on the side of the car that says this has got all recycled batteries in it, and people go, yeah, but it's $1,000 dearer. And that's a part of the problem we have in society, that even though we might have some of those tags, people go the cheaper option.
Yeah.
So that's an issue, but there's been some breakthroughs in the way we're doing some of this recycling. And just to go back one step, the first new life for an EV battery tends to be reuse rather than recycle. When you get your battery, it might be a 100 kilowatt hour battery, for example. And after years of use, you might run up, I had one vehicle that had 80,000 kilometres on it, and I was getting about 92 kilowatt hour equivalent. So it had lost about 8% of its effectiveness, but that was still fine. I was still getting good range. Maybe another couple 100,000 kilometres later, it might have got to the stage where I went, gee, this battery isn't great now. I want to do something with it. So the first thing that people typically do is they reuse it. That battery might be turned into a home battery, for example, where it's not as important to have that maximum capacity because you're not transporting it around. You're not carrying that weight around with you.
Exactly, yeah.
So after that's been used for a certain period of time and it's reduced its effectiveness, then maybe you would recycle. Now, with the new process that's been developed over in England, they essentially take the battery and crush it up into a fine black mass, a black powder. And with that, then, you've got everything in there. You've got all your plastics, all your metals, all your critical minerals, all in that powder. And then what they do is they say, we've got a process to pull the components out of that. And they use basically a hydrometallurgy process rather than high temperature methods, which reduces the emissions, reduces the energy that you're actually using to actually do it. They soak it all in sulfuric acid, they separate the graphite, then they purify that, then they go through and separate the aluminium, the copper and the iron. Then they've got various ways to extract one by one through chemical separation, nickel, cobalt, manganese. So essentially you pull all those components out. Now,
That's amazing.
It is quite amazing. And that sounds complicated, and for one battery it is. But their aim for just this one factory is to be able to get to the stage where they can recycle 150,000 batteries per year. That's a lot of batteries.
Yeah,
but
that's
then
a lot.
when you consider that at the moment we've got about 40 million cars on the road that are EVs, then we're looking at a problem 5 years, 10 years down the track, and the problem's already being solved today, which is fantastic. When you start to feed in a lot of batteries, then separate all those processes that I just mentioned, that becomes cost effective because you are working on economies of scale.
For sure.
And that's the critical part. When you get to that stage, then they'll be able to say, we've got recycled lithium, which guess what, is exactly the same as mined lithium. And that lithium we're going to charge X dollars per kilogram, and the mined lithium is more than X dollars per kilogram. Then people will say, I'll have me that recycled lithium, please, rather than cheaper.
Cars out of the recyclers.
Exactly right. Now, the other part is that there are some concerns about where some of these components come from. So nickel, about half of all the world's nickel comes from Indonesia, and there's some questions about the way they mine and human rights there. I'm trying to be very careful not to say anything too damning there, but there's some concerns. And then 2/3 of the cobalt around the world comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So there are some concerns about some of the processes in those places. So recycling, and there'll still be a need for mining for some time yet because we're increasing the volume that we need, but it will get to the stage at some point where maybe we've got enough of all these components and we just keep using them, putting them into batteries, recycle, put them into batteries, recycle, and keep that closed loop cycle going.
We also need to bear in mind that that's where the big deposits are at this stage, but we've got metallurgists out fossicking right now looking for new deposits in places.
Yeah.
And so if there's if there are any issues with the particular geographical locations where they're at, the socio-politics that goes behind that, then that may be only temporary.
Well, it may be only temporary, and you're right, people are out there looking for it. Forget about gold, don't fossick for gold anymore, go fossicking for lithium or some of these various elements that you'll need in huge quantities. The other thing to consider is, I thought it was interesting that this is being developed in England because England is a fairly small land mass compared to some other land masses around the world and probably not known for its natural resources. So for England, they may see this as really important just for a protection of their society. If you've got some other places where you've got to buy some of these minerals that have been mined, then other countries, for example, if you're mining them out of a less friendly country, then they might say, we're going to hold onto it for our own use and you can actually take a ride, thanks very much. So England getting to the stage where they're developing other ways to obtain it. If they haven't got it in the ground, let's be smart and work out how we can take what's already above the ground and use that. So that makes sense as well. So
Absolutely.
All those alarmists out there, it's okay. We're going to be okay. It's okay to buy an EV and you're not destroying the environment.
And that's where we are at this stage as well. I mean, what developments are still around the corner and just around the corner?
And think about how long EVs have been there. People talk about internal combustion engines, but we've had 130 odd years of internal combustion engines to develop to where they are today.
Yeah.
EVs, really, what are we doing? 10 or 15 years of serious activity with EVs. So, we've got a long way to go. And it's exciting. It's exciting to see this change.
Yep.
For some Luddites out there, maybe not so exciting. But for me, I get excited by all this change and how things are changing so quickly.
One of the big kickbacks of flying to the moon and back 6 times, that's between 1969 and 1972, mind, is that we now have significant collections of moon dust stored in a vault in Texas. And NASA scientists have been playing with this lunar regolith, or moon dust, shall we say, for the past 50 years or so. Matt, apparently Moonglass, made from moon dust, has some pretty cool qualities.
It does, actually. And I do like the term lunar regolith. I think
It is. It rolls off the tongue.
I'm going to use that more and more in daily conversation.
What are you doing with your lunar regolith?
That's right. You caught any lunar regolith lately? so I hope that's how you pronounce it. So after I'm going to start rolling it out. So it is fascinating. And this is all about the exploration of the next frontier. When we go to the moon now, which we're planning on going back, there's a whole range of processes in place that there's plans to go back to the moon.
Yeah.
When we're doing that, we want to set up some bases there maybe. We want to set up some research there. We talked before about doing some mining for some critical components that we might want to be able to send back to Earth, or we might want to use it there. But to do all that, we need some industry up there and we need power. One of the problems when we take up normal solar panels to the moon, or 2 problems. One, it's weight, it's payload on that rocket that we've got to go and get all the way to the moon.
So for every kilogram, there's a certain amount of fuel that you got to burn in order to get to there.
That's right. So it's a long way away, and you're fighting gravity pretty much directly. So you're going directly against gravity. So there's a bit of a fight there and a cost there. But the second thing is that you've got to fit it all in there. You've got to actually have it all in the payload, the physical size. And the other minor problem is that when we have solar panels here on Earth, we've built solar panels. We've become better at building solar panels for our environment. Now, we've got a fair bit of protection in our environment with our atmosphere, so we've built solar panels around that. When we take those same solar panels and put them up in space where we haven't got the same atmospheric protection, suddenly we find those solar panels degrade fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And in particular, radiation. So on the moon, the surface radiation levels are about 200 times higher than they are on Earth. So you take that solar panel, which works fantastically here, let's send it up to the moon. Well, not so good. One of the things they've worked out is moon dust, or solar panels made from moon dust, called Moonglass, or I want to call it Lunar regolith glass, is quite effective because it's in an environment already where it's being radiated at that high level. So when they make solar panels out of lunar regolith, then they actually find that they're much better at sustaining their production of electricity over a much longer period of time using that production technique.
There you go.
And then, and I thought about the manufacturing process, but when they want to create these solar panels, there's not a lot of components they've got to send up. So Perovskite they send up, but 1 kilogram of perovskite could generate about 400 square metres of solar panels if you used the other components that you got on the moon. And I started imagining this whole production facility on the moon. I thought, that's got to be complicated and expensive and hard to get there.
Yeah.
But when they start to generate enough solar panels that are needed, then it's a no-brainer. It's, well, let's just make it on the moon.
Absolutely.
Let's not make it on Earth and send it all up there. So fascinating. I really think, and we've mentioned this before, I really think there's a looming battle, though. Which country controls the moon? Or does any country, if I go there and start making money on the moon, am I paying taxes anywhere? Am I tax-free? Is this a haven for people that want to manufacture?
Managed to come to some sort of agreement with Antarctica, but it'll be interesting to see what they do with the moon.
Yeah, and Antarctica's at least here on Earth, and so someone could make a land claim and fight some wars over it. But gee, it's a tricky old war, fighting a war to take the moon, isn't it? You're drawing your 6-shooter at 50 paces. I don't know, but it is the new frontier. It's fascinating.
It is. Yeah.
But this is the sort of thing that we're finding now. Using moon dust for different manufacturing on the moon might be handy. Maybe it's okay on Earth as well. Maybe we could use it on the Earth in some different way.
One problem with having the biggest and best of something is that after a while, it's still not enough. You might have thought that the folks at CERN would have been satisfied with their Large Hadron Collider, which has been buried deep under the Swiss Alps for about 17 years. But as it turns out, the Large Hadron Collider just isn't enough anymore. Matt, they just want to go bigger and better now. What's a used Large Hadron Collider going for on Trading Post these days?
Yeah, can you stick that on eBay? What do you reckon you'll get for it?
$230. About what's a set of jousting sticks worth? Maybe you can swap them. But
you're dreaming. But
this is enormous. Yeah, it's like, and I love talking about the stats here. It's like 27 kilometre in diameter.
Yeah,
buried 100 metres below.
Is it 27 kilometres or circumference? Is it 27 circumference?
Circumference. Yeah.
And I'm actually fascinated by that because I thought the Large Hadron Collider had been around for a lot longer. But 2008 was when it came. I don't know why, but I just felt like it had been there for a long time.
Well, it came into prominence around 2012.
Yeah.
Because they were looking to, create a little bang rather than a big bang. And people were worried that it was going to create a black hole.
So it was 4th of July 2012 that the Higgs boson was confirmed. It was being talked about since the 60s, but confirmed.
I remember kids coming up to me in the playground saying, "Sir, what's this about a black hole being made? Are we all going to die?"
And you said, "Yes, go home, be good to your parents."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So it's fascinating that it seems to have come into general conversation for a very scientific thing. It's come into general conversation in the general public. Most people, if you said Large Hadron Collider or CERN, they'd have a bit of an idea of what you were talking about vaguely. But for a very specific scientific thing, I think they've done well for only being around for that length of time.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's getting to its use-by date. Already, they obviously didn't build it big enough when they did build it. And so they're going to build another one. But if you're going to go bigger...
It's like you've got the biggest and best toy and you go, well, I've played with this enough.
Yeah, let's go and move on. But if you're going to go bigger, you need to go much bigger. So forget 27-kilometre circumference. The new...
And it's buried 100 metres below the surface there.
The existing one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the new one,
amazing.
again, 200 metres below the surface is the new one. And presumably that's to be more stable. Further down you
It's tectonically stable there now, apparently. Yeah.
And look, I would like them to do this in Australia because we're pretty stable. We don't have many earthquakes. We don't have many
We're right
movements.
in the middle of a tectonic plate. In fact, we got some enormous cratons. They're like the seeds of a tectonic plate. So
There you go.
they're
So-
very, very, very stable sort of
Come and do it in
landmass.
Australia. Forget Switzerland and France. Come and do it over here. So the new one will be 91 kilometres in circumference. So that's bigger than 27.
wow.
You know, I can work that much out. So that's pretty impressive. The cost, though, and again, this is, I guarantee, when they finally build it, it will make this number seem like a dream. 27 billion Australian dollars is what they've quoted for the cost. But you can just imagine a project like this, it's going into the unknown. It's not like you can get 3 quotes from a few tradies and say, rightio, show me your experience, show me how many other...
Hadron colliders have you created?
That's right. And let's have a look at your work so far and give us a quote.
Hey, look, if you haven't been online to check it out, guys, Google some pictures. There are some amazing pictures. And to see the workers there, just in it's like something out of, an Austin Powers movie or like a James Bond movie. But no evil geniuses here. It just dwarfs people, but you can ride your bike around the circumference.
Yeah.
But the place where it all meets up is quite a spectacular sort of building.
And so the current one is about 3.8 metres in diameter, the actual tunnel that it sits in. So you ride your bike, walk along beside it. The new one will be 5.5 metres in circumference, in diameter for the tunnel itself. So again, they've got to go bigger with everything. That makes sense to me. And 8 to 10 times the energy of the Large Hadron Collider. Now, I'm not impressed with the name. You've got to spend $27 billion. Go and get Billy from marketing and get a decent name. So at the moment, they've called it the Future Circular Collider, which is only of any use as a name while it's in the future. So if they build it today, what do you call it? You
It's only a
can't call
temporary
it.
name then, quite clearly.
Obviously, yeah, but surely they can come up with something better, like Large Hadron Collider, LHC, a bit of a
But you know, a
ring to it.
student came to me today and he said that, do you know how the name X-ray came about? Is that they knew that there was something cool that they'd discovered. This is, what's his name, Ronkin, that had found this. They knew that there was something cool that they'd found it. They knew that it had to have a good name. They put an X in front of it, so they knew it was electromagnetic radiation, so they called it X-ray. Well, called it a ray.
Yep.
So we're going to call it X-rays until we come up with a better idea.
And here we are.
And here we are, we're still calling them X-rays. I think we're going to be calling this the Future Hadron.
That's right. Hey, when's it going to be built? 20 years ago. So it's great that your students are so focused on things. So have you confirmed that story, that the X was just put there
I
as a
believe
temporary
it's
marker?
true.
Yeah,
Look
right.
it up, folks. And write in and tell us that we're wrong.
Yeah, that's right. So it's fascinating, though, the plans they've got for the FCC.
Call it the FCC and no one will care.
That's right. Well, it's like CERN. CERN stands for European Council for Nuclear Research, which makes no sense at all when you look at CERN. But it's
those
there's the
Swiss.
translation of the native language to English comes up with European Council for Nuclear Research, and CERN makes no sense. So FCC could be anything. You can make it whatever you want. It doesn't matter if the letters don't even line up to what it's called. It's okay. So
Just a random sprinkling of letters.
random sprinkling. So they've got plans for it that essentially they've got the first 15 years of its usage. It's pretty serious stuff, isn't it, when you start talking about research you're going to do for the next 15 years. I'm working on this research. The research they'll work on for the first 15 years is going to be the electron-positron phase. Not sure exactly what they're hoping to get out of that. But then in the next years, up to the 2070s of this device, the proton-proton phase is what they'll be looking at. So presumably they'll have it structured and built for electron-positron phase, and then they'll change it in some way. And
So a positron, for the people who are unsure, is just a positive electron. Electrons are negatively charged. Positrons are positively charged electrons. And when they collide, they annihilate and they create gamma rays. which is an interesting sort of thing. We've got matter that becomes energy after it annihilates. So it's just it'll be interesting to see what they can do with that they haven't been able to do before.
That's right, with a bigger one. What can you do with a bigger one? Now, obviously some of
It is all about having a big one.
That's right. Some of the things
matters.
they talk about, nature of dark matter, dark energy,
Now
antimatter.
that's something.
This is where they're headed with all this. And there will be some practical uses out of this. So we'll probably be able to do some extra things with medical research, maybe fusion. We keep talking about fusion being the holy grail of energy.
Yeah.
And maybe even some new materials like superconductors we might be able to get out of having all this.
Neutrinos seem to be mysterious particles still. It might be interesting to see if they start playing around and working out what to do with neutrinos and anti-neutrinos.
It is fascinating, and this is something, unlike 739, this is something definitely we'll be talking about many times in the future. I'm sure we'll have some updates over the years before it finally starts and construction. I just want to know what they're going to do with the old one. Is the old one, young physicists,
Put it up
do they
on the
send
trading
them?
post.
Yeah, maybe, but young physicists, go and play with the LHC, and when you get the hang of it, come and work on the real thing.
They'll convert it to a cycling track underground. But
would be
my
cool.
question is when they get sick of this future cyclic collider, what then?
Well, if
Build
you
a
go
bigger
from
one that's
27
got
to 91, it's 3 times, so surely the next one's,
270
yeah, why
kilometre?
not? Yeah, sounds good.
Yep.
Maybe then I have to get to Australia. Like this, part of this is going under Lake Geneva.
They're not going to be happy until they've made a black hole and sucked everyone into it.
Yeah, that's right. Keep going until that happens.
Now, if you know someone with a traditional pacemaker and you know them well enough to have been shown it, then you'll know they make for a fairly prominent sort of a badge buried in the upper chest there. Well, as with all things technological, pacemakers have downsized and you can now pick yourself up one that's no bigger than a freckle, ladies and gentlemen. Hardly something to show off at parties, man.
Have you seen someone with a pacemaker?
I have.
Yeah, right.
And a
it
big
is-
lump in the chest.
So you can see it physically.
Yeah. You can see
wow.
that you make out the square shape quite clearly. Yeah.
And so they've got electrodes.
Now,
obviously.
that was a while back, right? So I
right.
don't know if the more recent ones have become smaller as they downsize, but this one is ridiculously small.
It
But
is ridiculously small.
But it's, I don't know, the size of a matchbox, and it just sort of sticks out of the chest.
And it's got electrodes. So that's on the outside, physically on the
No,
outside?
no.
Underneath.
It's underneath
Right.
the skin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's got electrodes typically that come out through the skin that then have some sort of power source. This whole concept that I'm going to talk about was inspired a little bit by the death of Neil Armstrong. So Neil Armstrong had a pacemaker, and then when they were doing some changes to that, some temporary wires were being put in, then that caused a bleed, and he eventually bled to death on the operating table
Wow.
while they were doing that. And so, again, not totally by that, but certainly the inventor of this, or the inventors of this, talked about the fact that having this whole concept where it's invasive to put a pacemaker in has risks associated with it, as demonstrated by Neil Armstrong. Now, I'm disappointed there that you've used freckle as a measurement tool, because swimming pools we
know.
normally go with.
Yeah, but for small things, it is a...
grain of rice.
Yeah.
It's got to be. It
How
can't be
many
a freckle.
grains of rice?
Because I've got some freckles on my skin. They're different sizes. So
Yeah, they are.
how can that be a standard of measurement? So this particular
So
item...
we're talking medium grain, long grain, or short grain?
Yeah, that gets complicated now. Average.
Yeah.
Can we go there in the middle? An average Olympic swimming pool and an average grain of rice. Why not?
International, a standard
Grain of rice. That's right. So 1.8 millimetres wide, 3.5 millimetres long, 1 millimetre thick. I'm more comfortable with actual SI units, but
That's basmati rice.
okay, we'll go with that. With standard white basmati rice. Okay, done. But it says that's smaller than a grain of rice. So that gives you
Yeah.
just some idea to be able to picture that. Now, what they do with
But
this...
that's a pacemaker. So
That's a
that's got
pacemaker.
a really important job and tiny.
So it's limited in its usage, so don't get too excited
Oh, okay.
for the guy that's got the bit sticking out his chest yet, but it's the first step. So it's designed specifically for infants, and you get 1% of infants born each year that have got heart defects, and one of the things they've got to do is keep their heart beating regularly while the heart repairs itself. It's out in the big wide world. Oh my gosh, how do I cope with all these external things coming in? I was pretty comfortable in my mum's womb. And then the heart needs to repair itself. So having some regular beats. So imagine having a newborn baby going, we're going to stick a pacemaker, we're going to operate, put electrodes in, stitch them onto the skin or onto the heart, and then have regular beating of the heart while it repairs itself because it's a newborn baby. This method allows them to inject a pacemaker with a syringe. Wow. It's a big syringe because it's got to fit a grain of rice, but it's a syringe nonetheless.
Yeah.
So that basically goes in, and it's designed with a couple of interesting things. It's got a galvanic cell which gets its energy by interacting with the body's biofluids. So it doesn't have a battery. It's a pacemaker without a battery. So then I started thinking, well, how does it know how often to fire off? How often does it know how often to trigger some electrical pulse to basically say beat? Because a pacemaker's got to be able to change depending on what the person's doing, depending on the needs of the person. So rather than have wires or batteries or anything, you wear a wearable chest patch and it's got bursts of infrared light that go through the skin to activate the pacemaker. So the pacemaker's in there saying, I'm doing nothing. Oh, burst of light. I better activate using the biofluids where I've got my energy from to actually put a jolt of electricity through. I don't think...
This is amazing
fascinating,
technology.
isn't it? Now, I don't think all of that's going to be good enough to power an adult heart.
Yeah.
But maybe you need 2 of them. Maybe you need 5 of them. I'm not sure.
Well, they start with an infant,
Yep.
and then what do they need to adapt to get it to work for someone who's bigger?
Now, at this stage, it dissolves after a couple of weeks. So you have one operation, you get a syringe, put it into your heart, and then the idea is that their infant's heart is repaired enough.
So it's like literally like a grain of rice.
And that's right, and then it goes away, gets absorbed by the body. So that's not good for someone that needs a pacemaker in general. But again, that's how they've designed this specifically to be dissolvable, not to be staying there forever. But there's no reason they couldn't construct the same concept to be there forever. We are making some great breakthroughs in bioresorbable electronics, which is what they're saying here. And I remember I had some stitches, a little skin cancer cut out recently, and I remember the doctor said, I'm putting some stitches under the skin and they'll just dissolve. And I go, that's pretty cool. And you know, that's not new, they've been around for a long time, but it's a stitch that holds it together for a certain amount of time. I don't know, 10 days later, they just have gone away there and my body's taken over. I think that's fascinating.
That is.
Saves you going back in and now we'll cut you open again to fix up those stitches. Oh, cut you again. What do we do now? So I think that's pretty cool. But getting more and more of these devices that just get absorbed by the body. But yeah, I just find all of that fascinating. And someone talking about this saying, I know, let's get blah, 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 and that'll be our solution. And someone says, no, there's too many variables in there. You can't possibly even think one of those, just triggering it by light or just by having powered by a bio. No, none of that will work, but you put all it together and they're doing this right now for infants as we speak.
There are some clever people in the world. Now, when you think of Adelaide, what comes to mind first? Is it City of Churches, the Adelaide Oval, or the Rundle Mall? Me, I think of traffic congestion, and I'm not the only one. Well, thankfully, the right sort of people are just like me, and they're onto a solution. AI has been enlisted to save the day and finally do something about Adelaide's traffic congestion, ladies and gentlemen. 3 cheers and a big hello to our South Australian listeners today, Matt.
And I didn't know it was that big a problem, but I was in Adelaide recently. And
I did make that up. But, yeah.
and I thought Adelaide was pretty nice place to get around. But I jumped in the cab and I said, so what's happening at the moment? He goes, the biggest thing in Adelaide that ever happens, and it's the local derby. It's the local AFL derby between the two Adelaide
Port
teams.
Adelaide and the Crows,
That's
right? Yeah.
So that meant the amount of people going to the ground that night, there was congestion on the roads. It was incredible. But that's all anyone would think about, and that happens once a year, I'm guessing, maybe twice a year, depending on the rounds, the way they work. But it's probably not a bad place to do some testing on. If you've got a place that's horribly congested, it's probably hard to see that you're making much of a difference. And this isn't that complicated, really. They're using AI. They've got 4 cameras. It's only cost $350,000. I feel like an AI tool spills that for lunch money. It just doesn't seem like a lot of money for a sophisticated AI tool. But what they're doing with this is basically it's being used to analyse traffic flow and modify traffic light cycles, which we kind of do now, but we do it in a very rudimentary way with some sensors underneath the road as you drive to traffic lights. It doesn't know how big a lineup is behind you.
Yeah.
It's not really looking
Just from that pad that's right at the line.
Yeah, that's right. So it's not that sophisticated, but it's not too bad. But one of my great frustrations is I pull up to traffic lights and they're red. So you do the right thing, you stop. And I look up the road, look down the road, and there's no one,
Is
not
there
a soul.
anything more frustrating than... it's 11 o'clock at night and you're
right.
the only one at that intersection.
And I go,
and you're
surely.
parked there because it's a red light.
I
and
can
then
go.
a car pulls up behind you.
That's right.
There's 2 of you, both
I
looking
think-
for the same result.
Surely I can go, but no, it's a red light. I've been trained not to go on a red light, but it just seems silly. The other one that's obviously frustrating is when you do have a long lineup and the light goes green and people chug away nice and slowly, and then it goes red before you get there, and you look at the cross traffic and there's no cars there. You go, there's only one guy there, there's a big line up here. So it's that type of thing.
Look, I feel guilty when I can see it's a green light and I'm miles away. There's no one else on my stretch, and we've got the green light, but I'm miles away and it stays green, and you can see the long queue that's stuck at the red light that's going perpendicular.
But what can you do about it?
That's right. And as I'm crossing, I'm feeling really naughty and apologetic, but I'm going across.
That's right. You're not going to stop there and go, sorry guys, I'll stop on the green here. So this analysed traffic flow, it modifies traffic light cycles in real time, so it can try to get to the point where you're not having those frustrating issues that we see. And then if it all works and does what it promises, then they can keep adding traffic lights, but it's only going to cost them $8,000, which to me again seems too cheap. You get a good camera, surely a good camera on there is going to cost you $8,000, and you need more than one, presumably. You need cameras that can see in different directions on the traffic light. So if anything, I'd be complaining if I was an Adelaide person, a South Australian, that it's not expensive enough. Spend more money on this, because surely you can't do the job properly. I also want to be able to get traffic lights that are set up like this, because I want to get one of those little things in my car that just makes it go green as I drive up to every traffic light. Surely that's available on the black market somewhere. Once you get traffic lights controlled by AI, then I just get one of those chips, like Batman's got one, I'm sure. So as you drive to lights, they just turn green and everything's your way. So I think that's the next step. Surely we could pay extra for that in our registration. We could have one.
And like having a very own motorcade. That,
that's right. Everything just turns green for me as I go. I mean, it might be a problem if everyone gets one. They have to make it very expensive, I suppose. And then you have to have a hierarchy so that I outrank someone else when we approach.
I reckon if you've got one of those, then you've got like a little light on top of your car.
It's got
Everyone's
a number.
Going to tail you.
Well, no, it's got a number. So I'm a 17, you're a 22, I beat you, sorry. So it is good though, because we talk about it a lot, that cars will communicate with each other and the infrastructure around. But we're a long way off that. We're a long way off all cars saying, I'm coming along, slow down a bit, I'm going to get there first, whatever. But we're still, at the moment, still able to do things without needing to have all cars communicate. And traffic lights, having those communicate with each other, being able to line up, analyse traffic flow, I think is a smart way to do it. So I'm keen to see how this trial goes in Adelaide and then roll out maybe in other places.
Thank you to the Crow Eaters. Now, as recently as last week, we talked about some of the trials and tribulations of the internet site with all the answers. That's Wikipedia. But apparently, we didn't cover the half of it. Turns out that for the past year, Wikipedia has been pretty much snowed under. Ever since AI came into prominence, there's been an enormous load put on the website. Matt, the bots have gotten a bit much and the pages of Wikipedia are starting to get a bit dog-eared and worn out.
Yeah, isn't it fascinating? For every new solution we come up with, for everything we think, look at this is great.
There's a speed bump.
There's a speed bump. There's something that happens along the way that we go, gee, we didn't think about that.
Didn't think about that. Yeah.
So there are lots of people out there playing with AI solutions. We know about the big ones, the Geminis, the ChatGPTs, but there's lots of different organisations out there creating customised AI, working out whether they want to be the next ChatGPT, but they need the data. They need the raw data. So what do? They turn to reputable sources, not Billy Blogs down the road's Facebook site. They go to reputable sources like Wikipedia.
Just like we do. So in the old days when you used to Google stuff, Wikipedia would come up first, and so you just dive onto that.
Exactly. And you've got
so many problems with school projects.
That's right. But you've got a bit of trust in Wikipedia. And so if we look at the last year, so since January last year, the traffic on Wikipedia overall has increased by 50%. Now, you might think, wow, Wikipedia's become popular, but that's not you and me searching. It was already popular. That's right. It was popular from humans, but now it's become popular with bots, because all these AI bots are out there going, I need data. I need source data. I need to have good, reliable information to be able to give my generative AI some sort of ability or context when I deliver answers. So let's go to Wikipedia.
And there'll be pedants out there saying, but it's not reliable because anyone can enter into a Wikipedia page and change it and whatnot. But we apparently studies suggest that it's at least 98 or 99% reliable now. So.
And its greatest weakness is the fact that anyone can edit it, but its greatest strength is that anyone can edit it.
Is that people keep checking on it.
That's right. And so when you see that people are editing it and they put silly stuff there, then someone else will jump on and fix it up. And in the end, the information tends to flow to the top. There is that ongoing battle with Iron Maiden about people keep changing Iron Maiden from being a rock band to a torture tool.
Yeah, right.
I don't know where it's at the moment. I remember looking at it some time ago and it kept bouncing back and forth. But in general, people are editing it and it gets the right information. So it's not just those places that AI looks, but that is a popular place to look. Now, the problem we've got here is that Wikipedia is a not-for-profit. It's not a advertising site. It's not somewhere that generates profit. It keeps its head above water, but it's not designed to be someone sitting back there, stroking their cat, taking all the money and declaring war on the world. It's designed to be a free site, and it's run by essentially donations and people that want good for the world. But when you start hitting it with 50% extra traffic, well, for a start, you need the internet bandwidth, so you've got to be able to pay for that and have that. Otherwise, the site becomes so slow that no one wants to use it, including the bots. And the second part is that you need to be able to host the information somewhere that's going to be able to deliver all that information out there. So this is a problem. If it was another social media site that was generating lots of revenue through advertising, more traffic might mean more advertising dollars, so they could justify the extra traffic and pay for the extra bandwidth and extra infrastructure. But good old Wikipedia can't do that. So the company itself, Wikimedia, that runs Wikipedia, is actually doing some things where they're starting to block some of the bot traffic, which is tricky because you've got to be pretty certain it's a bot, not Matthew Dickerson searching for something and then I get blocked because it thinks I'm a bot. You've been a bit too active today, Matthew, so we're going to block you because we think you're a bot. So
stop looking stuff up, Matthew.
That's right. So this is a problem. One way they picked up that some of these are bots is they're often requesting obscure articles, which I do as well, but they often request obscure articles. And part of the problem there is that they're not cached locally, so they've got to go and pull the data off those source servers, again, which creates more internet traffic and more pressure on the infrastructure. So it is a challenge. I don't know if there's an easy solution. Again, Wikimedia is trying to work out how they can block this traffic, but then we want good data for AI, so we kind of don't want it blocked. But I get Wikipedia's problem that they keep getting all this traffic generated and they can't afford to keep just upgrading everything. So this is where we're at with AI. It's impacting a whole range of things, impacting digital creativity, it's impacting
the internet. That's what it's
bullying
doing.
the internet, that's right. So go easy on it, will you? So I don't know the solution. I don't know if there's an easy solution, but I'm sure it's a bit of a frog jumping exercise where you leapfrog one and you get ahead and then someone else leapfrogs you. And you're trying to get to a solution that's stable, but I just don't know that it's going to be that stable.
It's hard to pick what the problems are going to be when we develop new technologies.
You're right, and you don't know what they're going to be until you do it and think, oh, we didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, whoops.
RSI, repetitive strain injury. It's a real thing, and it came into public consciousness way back in the 80s when modern computing invited excessive keyboarding and unfettered joystick activity. That's to be poetic. Now in 2025, RSI has taken on a different look as tendons in our thumbs swell and explode from the incessant high-energy scrolling and texting that we do on our daily basis on our phones. Matt, I'm lost for words. Just how soft have we become?
Well, I think RSI back in the 80s, you said, was probably more of a problem with typewriters, wasn't it, rather than computers?
Yeah. Look, and it probably was a problem that dated well before that. I mean, we've had typists typing pools for long before that. But,
and
I just remember people used to, the jokes started flying about RSI in the 80s. Yeah,
they did. Well, RSI started to become a term. I don't know it was really used as a term.
It probably wasn't used previously.
Before that. But I thought it was typewriters because it takes physical energy, a large amount of physical energy to move those keys.
You had to punch those keys, didn't you?
Absolutely did, compared to a keyboard is much softer.
But I thought that it was also the fact that your wrists were being held still with the computer keyboards. You didn't have to quite move your hands as much.
And I'm sure the same thing happened to people in the 70s and 60s, but they just went, I've got a sore wrist or a sore finger.
I'll get over it.
We got a bit soft and went, oh, we better give this a name. And interesting enough, RSI is not the correct term anymore. We've moved on from RSI. We've now got OOS, occupational overuse syndrome. We've got CTD, cumulative trauma disorder.
Sounds like we're pandering to Sooks. Sorry, that's me.
I will make no comment on that. We've also got WMSDs, which is work-related musculoskeletal disorder. So
And I take it all
RSI,
back. This is legitimate stuff, so I'm going to be much more careful about what I say.
RSI is so yesterday.
Yeah, it's so
Now you've got more definitions about what it is, but we've also got Quervain's tenosynovitis, which is basically texting thumb.
Right.
Yep.
Now, I just reckon that if you've got texter's thumb, stop texting.
Well,
Stop scrolling.
I read-
Just put it down for a bit.
I read some information, and that is a solution. You've just given all the medical advice that people need to have, but people were told that you probably need to just rest your thumb, stop texting for a few months.
And use your index finger.
Maybe use your index finger, but when people were told that they'd have to stop texting for 3 months, they
You
said,
can't tell me that.
They said, I'll just put up with it, or can I have some cortisone injections? Can I do something? Because I can't stop texting for 3 months. That's
right.
ridiculous. You may as well say stop breathing for 3 months if you say stop texting for 3 months. So that didn't seem to be a good solution. But I actually wonder whether technology is going to solve a bit of this problem, because we're getting much better now at voice activation.
Yes.
And I know a friend of mine who loves it because he's in the car a lot. When you'll be talking to him, if he wants to send a text, you'll be just chatting like this, and rather than pull out a phone and send a text like normal people would, he'll just pick up his phone and start talking to it, because he becomes so accustomed to doing that in the car. So I think that maybe that will be a technology solution. So rather than put your
People
phone
start
down,
saying, why are you still using your thumbs?
that's right. How yesterday you'll get
Ape.
texting thumb if you keep using your thumbs like that. But isn't it interesting that as we continue to develop and evolve? And the problem is, some people say, well, will we as humans evolve to be able to handle texting thumb? But evolution takes so long with humans, because our generations, 25 years or whatever for a generation, we're too slow.
Cultural evolution happens rapidly. Biological evolution cannot keep up.
That's
with
right. It takes centuries for real evolution to happen in our physical body. So by the time we've fixed that problem, we've created 20 other
But I'm
problems.
just wondering how many of our listeners out there are appealing to their employers and their bosses and supervisors, saying, look, I can't come into work today because I've got texter's thumb.
That's right. or worse, they're at work and the boss says, can you just send a message to Mary?
I can't.
I can't do that. No, I'm sorry.
thumbs.
I've got texting thumbs. This could be a problem. This could be the next workplace ailment to get people to have some holidays.
And it's probably a lot more serious than what I'm making here right now, but holy smokes.
Or maybe it isn't.
Now, I love myself a bit of physics. And I reckon as far as timekeepers go, cesium clocks are right up there for precision measurements. But that didn't stop someone wanting to go one better still. Apparently, if you like your time super accurate, then cesium clocks just don't cut the mustard anymore. Matt, clock nerds need to get themselves into optical clocks, apparently.
Yeah, that's the go. And I always get excited about the clock that we've got here in our green room here that is accurate to within 200 milliseconds. But
That's a
200 milliseconds.
cesium clock can do billionths of a second.
Yeah, what a joke that clock is. I'm going to take it down now because it's just so embarrassing. But isn't it fascinating that we have such a complicated definition of 1 second? So off the top of my head, about 9,192,631,770 oscillations of cesium-133 defines a
Very
second.
round number.
That's right, exactly. So we've got that as a definition. So we create cesium clocks that obviously have cesium-133 inside them, and they count the ticks of that, the radiation of that, and they go, there's 1 second, there's 1 second. And we know we need really accurate time for things like GPS. We need accurate time, so the satellites sitting there going along have got the same time, and the clocks on the ground or our device on the ground have got all that matched up, taking into account Einstein's theory of relativity in terms of the speed they might be travelling
that's
at.
right. They've got to take into that account as well. It's amazing. And look, just on that, the way we used to tell time was very arbitrary, and times in between villages. This is whole. If you can go and Google the origin of Greenwich Mean Time,
Right?
Because you could catch a train. It wasn't until we got train timetables that people worked out, we better coordinate our clocks, because you could catch a train in one town and arrive at the next town before you left.
That's right. Which you can do now with planes, but you couldn't do it with trains.
Yeah. So it's just So they decided they needed a standard.
Yeah.
They needed to all set their clocks in the same way. But to do it with a cesium clock, that's really, really accurate.
And we've got
But
lots
not
of
as accurate.
cesium clocks around the world,
We do.
which is good, because we need to make sure that everyone's on the same time for a whole range of things that we do. But you're right, we've moved ahead. Cesium, That's so yesterday. That's
Yeah.
back there with RSI.
Exactly.
We've now got to the point where we've got optical clocks. Now, there's only 100 worldwide. Now, it might be like DEC, Digital Electric Corporation, where there were 7 computers around the world, and I think the founder of DEC, Ken Olsen, said something like, there's not really a need for more than 7 computers around the world. And that was before every household had multiple computers in the household. So 100 optical clocks today, some people might say, that's all we need. Why do we need more than 100? But how long before I have a nice optical clock in my green room here and telling exactly
How long before you wear one on your wrist?
That's exactly right. So what they've been doing is some testing. They want to make sure they're accurate before they start taking over from cesium clocks. And they've been doing things where, for example, they built one over in Germany. They sent that to London, built one to Japan, sent that to London, compared their times. And they found that the time accuracy between those two clocks that have been built independently was about 1 part in 1 million trillion. It just sounds like a made-up number, doesn't it? A million trillion.
Yeah, they know that it's so small that no
That's
one's
right.
going to...
At school, I think you say trillions and squillions.
It's a bajillion.
Yeah, that's right,
Yeah.
that many. So it's a big number, and it's only 1 part in that. They think they've got the optical clocks to the accuracy of 15 seconds of time lost over the life of the universe. That seems like a fairly accurate clock.
So we need someone to hang around
That's
and just test them to see if they're right.
And obviously 15 seconds out would be a disaster, but over the life of the universe, that would probably be almost acceptable. So this is where we're headed. Optical clocks, much better. Have we got a new standard? No, we haven't. Are they working on that? Yeah, that's the idea, that they're working on that. In Japan, they've been using optical clocks as a national time standard for the last couple of years, but it's not really an international standard. The goal is to globally redefine the second using optical clocks by the year 2030. So still a few years to go. Cesium hasn't been wiped off the planet yet, but optical clocks using strontium atoms with quantum transitions will be what will be the standard, and they say that they'll probably be accurate to about 16 decimal places with the technology we've got today.
At the third stroke, the time will be... that's amazing.
It is amazing,
That
isn't it?
But hey, we can be timing Formula One racing, the luge,
All these things.
all these Olympic events to 16 decimal places.
That's right. But it would give us more accuracy. So with our GPS, we've got pretty accurate location data now.
Yeah.
But the more accurate you can get all those clocks coordinating that, the more accurate they can say exactly your location in space, in 3D space.
Right.
So that's obviously one way you can use
So
it.
saying that your watch stopped and that's the reason you're late.
No, not any good anymore.
Yeah, no good. You've got an optical clock and you need to do better.
Yep. So I want one on my wrist. That's all I'm after. Yeah, bit of strontium on my wrist with an optical clock so I can tell the time exactly. So I know exactly how late I turn up for things.
And that's it for today's show. We've got to get this picnic all packed up before the ants arrive and carry us away. Thanks for another cracking Tech Talk, Matt.
Well, I'm going to go and play. This launches at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, so I'm going to wait about 39 minutes. I'm going to go and play with 739 once before it's closed down, so I can say, I remember that site. I played with that once.
You'll report back to us. Well, I'm off to go and get myself a copy of the Trading Post. You know what I'm going to do with it. See if I can get myself a Large Hadron Collider and see if they deliver. And if not, maybe I'll get myself some jousting sticks.
Yeah, why not?
And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. It's a podcast that is the brainchild of none other than Matthew Dickerson, birthed naturally in the most hygienic of environments and supported by only the best in obstetrics, of course. I've been your host, James Eddy, wishing you a week of clear skies and even breezes to carry your boat comfortably into the harbour until next week and when we meet again for another episode of Tech Talk. Until then, take care.